Birdbrook, Essex, in the early 14th century. You are running a watermill. Grain arrives from farms and households nearby. Water pushes against the wheel. Inside the building, wooden gearing transfers that motion to the millstones. Grain goes in. Meal comes out. Each new sack seems to offer another chance to earn. On the surface, this looks like an unusually dependable medieval business. People have to eat, grain has to be processed, and a watermill can do work that would otherwise demand far more time and labor. But there is a catch. You may operate the mill without owning the land beneath it, the building around it, the water infrastructure that powers it, or the most valuable rights connected with the property. There is another complication. In parts of medieval England, customers did not choose between mills in anything like a modern free market. So the real question is not simply whether a mill could earn money. It is whether the person running it could turn that income into lasting wealth, and whether the owner of the mill had the better deal all along. Birdbrook gives us a useful place to test that question, because surviving manorial records cover much of the period we are examining. While historical research has studied its mills and their revenues over a much longer span, we do not have a perfect annual profit and loss statement for one named Birdbrook Miller. That limitation matters. But we do have a real economic setting rather than an invented medieval business. And the first thing that setting forces us to do is separate two people who are easy to confuse: the mill owner and the mill operator. A manorial lord or institutional property holder could control the land, the building, access to the water, and the productive asset itself. Daily operation could belong to somebody else, a miller, a tenant, or another person responsible for keeping the mill working. Those two positions create different kinds of economic benefit. If you operate the mill, you may receive income from grinding grain. But you may also face rent or other obligations. You manage the daily work. You deal with interruptions. You handle customers. Depending on the arrangement, you may carry part of the maintenance burden. The owner sits in a different position. The owner controls durable property. That distinction will follow us through the entire business. A mill can produce an operating surplus without making the operator the owner of the asset that produced it. And if we ignore that difference, it becomes very easy to make a medieval miller look wealthier than the evidence supports. From outside, the business looks almost automatic. Water flows, the wheel turns, grain is ground. Inside, every step depends on another. Start with the water. The mill needs a usable and reasonably reliable flow. Water is not what the customer buys, but without it, the rest of the productive system loses its power source. The wheel converts that moving water into mechanical energy. Shafts and gearing carry the motion through the mill. The millstones do the grinding. And every link in that chain has to remain functional. Damage the wheel and capacity falls. Break the gearing and production can stop. Let the stones wear beyond what the operation can tolerate, and grinding slows or requires attention. A breakdown creates two costs at once. There is the direct cost of putting the machinery right. Then there is the income lost while the mill cannot process grain normally. The grain itself also has to move through a controlled process. It arrives. It is handled and measured. It is ground. The processed product has to be returned appropriately. So a watermill is not simply a wooden wheel sitting beside a stream. It is an integrated productive system. Water supplies the power. Machinery transfers it. Specialized equipment performs the work. Labor keeps the operation functioning. Customers bring the grain. Only when those pieces work together does capacity turn into revenue. That is why the mill is better understood as infrastructure than as a single machine. A passerby sees the turning wheel. The operator has to think about throughput, wear, repair, labor, and downtime. This is where the business begins to split into two different investments. Building and maintaining a medieval watermill could require substantial capital. There is the site, The water management infrastructure, the building, the wheel, timber, gearing, millstones. All of that belongs to the productive system. But if you enter the business as a tenant operator, it would be misleading to treat the entire construction cost as your startup investment. You may not have built any of it. You may not own any of it. Your own financial position can be much narrower. You may need resources to meet rent or other tenancy obligations, handle daily operating expenses, maintain whatever falls under your responsibility, and survive periods when income arrives more slowly than costs. That creates an important difference. The owner has capital stored in durable, productive property. The operator has to keep that property earning. And valuable machinery does not become the operator's wealth simply because the operator uses it. Working cash matters for the same reason. Repairs do not wait for a good month. Labor does not automatically disappear because throughput is weak. An obligation can still fall due when grain volume is disappointing. So the business might look viable across a full year and still produce moments of serious cash pressure. We cannot assign Birdbrook a precise tenant startup requirement or working capital figure from the evidence currently available. Those values remain unknown. But we do not need an invented number to see the underlying structure. The owner controls the asset. The operator depends on its continued productivity. Now imagine the mill enters a weaker period. Less grain arrives. Or part of the machinery needs attention. Output falls. Some expenses may decline with activity. Others do not. A tenant may still owe rent or another continuing obligation. Essential maintenance does not vanish. If a wooden component breaks, it still has to be replaced. If specialized repair is required, somebody with the right skills still has to perform it. Timber matters because so much of the mill's structure and machinery depends on wood. Millstones matter because they wear and require attention. They are productive equipment, not permanent scenery. Then there is labor. Water provides energy, but water does not operate a business by itself. Someone handles grain. Someone manages the machinery. Someone performs routine work. And when more specialized repairs are needed, additional labor may have to be brought in. Household labor complicates the calculation. A spouse or relative may work without a clearly recorded cash wage. That does not make the labor economically worthless. If the evidence does not allow us to value that work, the responsible answer is not zero. It is unknown. The real danger comes when a single problem hits both sides of the ledger. Suppose the machinery is damaged. Repair raises costs. At the same time, downtime reduces the amount of grain that can be processed. Revenue falls. So the operator pays more while earning less. And delaying the repair to protect short-term cash can make the next period worse. This is what makes infrastructure businesses fragile even when their basic service is valuable. The mill earns because it can process grain repeatedly. The moment its productive capacity becomes unreliable, the economics begin to change. Now we can finally look at what the customer pays for. The visible service is simple. A household brings grain. The mill grinds it. The operation receives a milling charge, often described through the historical concept of multure. More grain passing through the mill creates more opportunity to earn. But that revenue is not the same as profit. More production also means more use of the machinery. More use creates wear. Labor is still required. And the mill cannot process unlimited grain simply because demand exists. Capacity depends on the water supply. It depends on the condition of the machinery. It depends on operating time. And above all, it depends on grain arriving in the first place. So, the visible transaction only explains part of the business. Grain comes in, grinding happens, a charge is collected. The more interesting issue is what brings customers to this mill rather than another one. If the answer were simply convenience, quality, or price, we would have something close to a conventional competitive business. In parts of medieval England, the relationship could be very different. A watermill already has one obvious advantage. It concentrates expensive productive equipment in a single place. Households do not each need their own water wheel, gearing system, and large millstones. Instead, grain can be brought to a shared productive asset. That alone makes the mill useful. But medieval, manorial arrangements could make the economic position stronger. In parts of England, rights and obligations associated with what historians describe as suit of mill could require tenants to use a lord's mill or otherwise limit their practical freedom to take grain somewhere else. The details varied from manor to manor. The strength of enforcement varied too. And our evidence does not justify saying that every Birdbrook household in this period was compelled to use one specific mill. That claim has to remain qualified. But the broader mechanism changes the business completely. The wheel processed the grain. The manor system helped deliver the customers. That is the point where the watermill stops looking like a machine that happens to earn a fee. It begins to look like control over a bottleneck. Households need grain. Much of that grain still has to pass through a processing stage before it becomes the food they want. If a productive asset controls that stage, the mill occupies an important position. And if institutional rules also direct customers toward that asset, demand may be partly structured before the operator does anything to attract it. The mill does not necessarily have to win every customer through price competition. It does not have to advertise. It may not even face customer choice in a modern sense. Some of the demand can come from the economic and legal structure surrounding the property. This does not mean guaranteed profit. The machinery still has to work. The water still has to flow. Costs still matter. But it does reveal where part of the real value lies. Not only in technical efficiency, not only in the stones, not only in the wheel. The deeper mechanism combines expensive infrastructure, recurring need, and access to customers. And that returns us to ownership. If the valuable position depends on the site, water infrastructure, productive equipment, and rights attached to the property, then the person who owns those things controls something more durable than this year's grinding income. The operator can earn from the bottleneck. The owner controls the bottleneck itself. That structural advantage does not remove responsibility. Water gives the mill its power. But water can also interrupt production. Too little usable flow reduces capacity. Problems with the water system can affect the mill even when customers are waiting. Customer grain creates income, but somebody has to receive it, handle it, process it, and return it properly. The mill is working with other people's property. That creates practical responsibility alongside revenue. Institutional rights can also strengthen customer access. But those rights belong to a particular legal and manorial setting. They are not identical everywhere, and they can be contested. That is why suit of mill should not be treated as a simple medieval switch marked monopoly. It can strengthen demand without removing the costs of operating the asset. Protected customers are useless if the stones cannot turn. A legal advantage does not replace maintenance. So the mill depends on two systems at the same time. The physical system has to remain productive. The institutional system has to continue supporting the economic position. Weakness in either one can reduce the value of the operation. The same structure that creates the advantage also creates the points where the business can fail. The clearest threat begins with something very ordinary. Less grain. A poor harvest means less grain is available. With less grain available, less can reach the mill. Lower throughput means lower milling revenue. But the operator's obligations may not decline at the same pace. Rent can continue. Maintenance can continue. And the machinery does not care whether the harvest was good when something breaks. Now combine weak throughput with a repair. The mill needs money at the exact moment its income is weaker. cash becomes tighter. The operator delays maintenance. Reliability worsens. Lower reliability reduces future capacity. What began as a weak harvest can become a broader operating problem. The chain looks like this: less grain, lower throughput, lower revenue, continuing obligations, delayed maintenance, worsening equipment, weaker future capacity. Water disruption can produce a similar effect. Customers may still need the service, but the mill cannot process their grain at normal capacity. Our period also reaches the enormous social and economic disruption of the Black Death in the late 1340s. But that does not give us permission to invent a Birdbrook profit collapse. Without a local operating ledger that isolates the financial effect on a specific mill, we cannot attach an exact loss to the plague. What the period does show is how exposed a business like this is to changes in population, labor, grain supply, and local demand. Control of a bottleneck can make a business powerful. It does not make it immune. We now have enough of the business model to test it financially. But what follows is a reconstruction. It is not a surviving Birdbrook annual statement. Documented figures remain documented figures. Compatible historical benchmarks remain benchmarks. Anything we have to assume remains an assumption. The most important variable is grain throughput. Start with a strong year. The grain supply is healthy. Water is dependable. The machinery avoids major downtime. A relatively high volume passes through the stones. Grinding revenue is stronger, while routine obligations are easier to absorb. Such a year could leave an operating surplus and help support the operator's household. That is still not the same as durable wealth. Now move to an ordinary year. Throughput is normal. The machinery requires ordinary attention. Costs do not disappear, but there is no exceptional breakdown dominating the year. If normal milling income stays sufficiently above rent, labor, maintenance, and other obligations, the operation can remain viable. The surplus may be modest. The mill can still provide a strong livelihood. Then the weak year arrives. Less grain comes in. Downtime increases. A repair becomes more difficult to absorb. Some obligations remain almost unchanged. Revenue can fall much faster than costs. The operator may move from surplus into cash pressure, while the mill itself remains a valuable physical asset for its owner. That distinction matters. A bad year for the operator does not mean the property has suddenly become worthless. And a valuable property does not mean the operator is having a profitable year. Without a complete compatible set of Birdbrook figures, we should not pretend to know an exact annual profit. The reconstruction gives us a more defensible answer. The operation works when enough grain passes through the stones to cover continuing obligations, labor, and maintenance. As throughput approaches the level needed merely to cover those costs, every repair and every interruption becomes more dangerous. That brings us back to Birdbrook and to the original question. A mill was not simply a job performed beside a river. It was productive property, and the person operating that property did not necessarily accumulate the same economic value as the person who owned it. The operator could receive income. In a favorable year, that income could support a household and leave a surplus. If the operator retained some of that surplus and later converted it into assets that actually belonged to the household, then operating success could begin to become longer-term wealth. But that conversion is a separate step. The mill itself does not become the operator's property merely because the operator runs it well. The owner still controls the underlying productive asset. The owner holds the site, the infrastructure, and the long-term value attached to the property and its rights. So could operating a medieval watermill make you rich? It could put you in a strong economic position. Under favorable conditions, it could support a household and potentially generate a meaningful surplus. But the wheel turning every day was not enough. Success depended on grain throughput, reliable water, working machinery, manageable obligations, maintenance that did not overwhelm cash, and dependable access to customers. Even then, operating surplus and lasting wealth were two different things. Between the person running the mill and the person who owned the productive asset, the owner generally held the stronger long-term position. Return to the scene where we began. A sack of grain arrives. Water pushes the wheel. The gearing turns. The stones begin their work. At first, every revolution seemed to represent another payment for the miller. Now the picture looks different. The real value was not simply in making the wheel turn. It was in controlling a necessary piece of infrastructure between grain and bread. The miller could earn from the grain. The deeper fortune belonged to whoever controlled the bottleneck.